definitely not unwinnable for Alutemu. But if we are talking about fatigue beyond the athletic studies, Bankyugi is also running 1 War Cache and 1 less Corsair Cache. Alutemu is running maximum card draw in terms of weapon tutoring. So if we are talking purely fatigue, Bankyugi has this in the bag.
Well, Girinjia, this one game I think is going to last longer than all 3 days of APAC broadcast last week, because this controller, it can go on for a little while. And I mean, even it's even more of a culprit than Priest, I think, in terms of these long games now, because at the very least, Priest does manage to actually, spend its mana on Sethix. It's tempoing out a lot of dragons and big minions. This deck very often just does absolutely nothing for a long time. But Bankyugi already, even if this hand doesn't look all that impressive, he has pretty close to the nuts. Just because he has Rattlegore in his starting hand, that is what matters.
And the coin, he can get it out on turn 8. Also, I want to note, Bankyugi kept Corsair Cache, which you would think, if this is purely about fatigue, that's kind of like Insight. You don't want to play it to get 1 card deeper in your deck, but Bankyugi has the Cthulhu pad, so he's absolutely fine drawing a weapon. And even Alutemu, who is not able to win in fatigue, is playing the Corsair Cache. I think Bankyugi's fine to play it because you just kind of want to make sure you do get to the important cards, which means you need to get Outrider's Axe to get some card draw rolling. And in Alutemu's case, he knows he's never winning in fatigue, so he's just trying to thin his deck towards Rattlegore. Little does he know, Bankyugi already has his.
Yeah, exactly. It's the weird case of Bankyugi is already winning in fatigue and is winning by so much that both players can just draw cards because it's not going to affect things either way, I don't really think. Honestly, cutting class, again, I think to try and turbo through to your Cthulhu is more likely to be good than either of these 2 mediocre removal tools.
I can see the merit for Bladestorm, even if it just removes 1/9 of a Rattlegore at some point. I am potentially worried about Bankyugi's hand space also because I don't think he wants to play Bulwark this early, which is the way to cheapen the cutting class. We're more likely to see the Kargath, and he wants to hold on to coin all the way until turn 8 for the Rattlegore. So I'm kind of a fan of taking just the singular card.
Fair enough. And I guess having enough removal is pretty core to his game plan because it's either, either way, it's turboing through to Cthulhu or it's removing their threats all the way until you get to Cthulhu. Because again, aside from the Rattlegore, there aren't that many powerful minions for Alutemu. It's just the double troublemaker, really. And I guess Kargath Prime as well.
Yeah, Bladestorm also pretty premium to deal with either the Kargath Prime or the big body on the Troublemaker if you have some additional removal tools to get rid of the 3/3s. Alutemu going to go ahead and keep his card draw going, play out his own Kargath, I have to expect. And this is just very classic stuff we haven't seen in a long time. True Control Warrior mirrors. Like, the closest we've had to this in a long time is Bomb Warrior mirrors, which have their own set of clowny rules to them in terms of how the end game plays out.
Yeah, you just have to learn the couple of rules. Like, this isn't as bad as the Odd Warrior mirror that was biggest when we were doing... Justicar was big, and then Odd Warrior was big, where it was just about generating that 3/6 dragon that shuffled the Matriarch into your deck. I can't even remember what it was called, but it was so toxic, that metagame. That was so toxic. But this one is a little bit less...
Firehorn something? Matriarch?
Yeah.
I don't really remember.
Yeah,
something. It's a cute card, but only the first time you saw it and not the next 5 times after all the facelesses. As for Alutemu here, it does seem like he is all about drawing towards Rattlegore, so Stage Dive can actually get him his Corrupt Kargath Prime now. Sorry, not Corrupt, but the Prime. And that's a pretty decent card. Oh, but he can also just commence something like that out. Okay.
I'll tell you what.
Itself.
Yeah, Rattlegore's good, but Rattlegore with Divine Shield and Taunt sounds really, really good. I like it a lot. He's losing this game already. He is losing. He needs to go for some kind of a miracle.
And the way that Alutemu, Glory, and Possessi have built their Control Warrior you were mentioning is lighter on the minions. Of course, it's still very unlikely to pull the Rattlegore at the moment. Alutemu still has Barov, 1 Scorpid, Vol'jin, 2 Shield Maidens, the Prime, 1 Troublemaker, and Rattlegore in the deck. But all of the upper half of those cards are pretty fine to get off of the commencement. So I respect this choice a lot.
Yeah, there is actually some debate as well about whether you go for the armor vendor, because if you do go for commencement and it's not Rattlegore, you're weaker to brawl. Maybe you're going to need it to juice up your shield slams later on, but in the end, sure, just throw it down, get it on the board, spend your mana, and then you can just go 7 into 8 and hope that that's good enough to get there.
And for Bankyugi, this turn feels like armor vendor, button, and pass. There's just not enough pressure on the other side to warrant any of his removal pieces. He is simply, I guess, gonna think about clearing the Scorpid for next turn to clear the path forward. Alutemu is like, no, that's the worst one next to Barov, I guess.
Oh, that's literally the worst one. Yeah, he just like deletes a card from his to discover as well.
Oh yeah.
That's gonna sting.
It's pretty funny though. Well, the game plan continues. He can still look for his Rattlegore with the other Outrider's Axe, and he at least has Troublemaker to start the late game curve. Let's be real though, this is just early game, turn 8 for the Control Warrior Mirror.
Yeah, Bankyugi of course needs to have in his mind now, what do I do in the case of Troublemaker? Because again, with no coin for his opponent, he doesn't have to be afraid of Rattlegore yet. And a very valid answer is, of course, just to go coin Rattlegore in response. But given that he can guarantee Kargath Prime, that honestly just feels even better. Sticks a big play, and of course deals with the Troublemaker very efficiently.
Yep. You could even brawl the Troublemaker board. There's honestly not much that you want to brawl against Warrior, and in this situation, well, Alutemu is just going to continue the draw here, I think, because he knows the Troublemaker would make him super prone to brawl. And the Scorpid is more valuable than it looks because it can deal with 1/9 of the Rattlegore.
Damn! Yeah, almost there.
We could see the Rattlegore get down to a relatively low health total. Look at this removal in Alutemu's hand. He can Shield Slam 1/9 of it. He can Shield Slam another 9th of it. He can Blade Storm parts of it.
I mean, again, it's the perfect opportunity to remind the dev team that Rattlegore, each time it resummons, should replay with a slightly higher pitched version of the voice line. It would just be so hilarious to have Rattlegore as the little 1/1, but...
is the one. Yeah. Well, here we are. I think Alutemu is going to go through this the hard way.
Oh, it's so ridiculous. I mean, he can actually already kill quite a few parts of it, right? He can go 8/8, 7/7, Poison, trade Bladestorm. Like, and most of it's gone already. Yeah.
It is. I mean, I respect it. It's just that the second Shield Slam / second Blade Storm is like, if you use both of those, what are you going to do about Kargath Prime?
Yeah.
It's Barov then. It's not out of the question that he just goes through it this way. He's doing it! He's doing it!
This is objectively hilarious.
Rattlegore! Rattlegore! It's going higher and higher!
Man, poor Rattlegore is just summoned onto the board and instantly is absolutely obliterated. It's killed 6 times in one turn. 7! It's a 2/2! What is this?
Yo. I was pretty sick from Alutemu. I was half kidding that he had to spend all those resources. But you know what? It's pretty correct. What else is he going to spend this removal on? He still has Brawls. I guess the Shield Maidens. But beyond that, the Body of Cthulhu? Sure.
Yeah, and Rattlegore going full hungry cat mode now, where all it's doing is kind of clawing at his heels now because nothing is... it can't do anything more than that. This is hilarious.
Okay, Troublemaker finally looks somewhat decent here, but then the Blade Storm lets him take down the Shield Maiden, and he can still develop his own Shield Maiden. This makes it such that the the Troublemaker doesn't potentially have disastrous trades. Okay. Now we're talking, Alutemu. He has his own Rattlegore to follow up.
He does.
Bankyugi doesn't have nearly as much removal as Alutemu had to deal with the 9/9. But what about, after having seen double Shield Slam, double Blade Storm, just a Kargath Prime?
Yeah, it goes to, what, 6 health? Which is a little scary just because of the threat of double Troublemaker. Running into it both times with the 3/3s. Not to say that it's wrong at all, just that is a way that it could be killed off. But I guess if it's like a 1 in 9, you'll take that chance.
Yeah. Could be the trigger for Barov from Alutemu, although he doesn't really have a way to kill off his Barov at the moment. We could see just Rattlegore into stage dive for his own Kargath Prime.
True, yeah, that's true. Is it Azzinoth and then hit?
I guess not hit, right? Oh, yeah, you can
Bulwark?
hit the 12 one. Yeah.
I mean, you lose 2 charges, obviously, because it swings and negates the damage, but that's good, right? You'd happily lose a charge to save 12.
It doesn't necessarily work out to saving 12 because he could have equipped and not swung and still could have, in many situations, negated the 12 and then just traded the Barov next turn. But this way he just makes sure that the Barov sticks around, which is potentially annoying for Bankyugi.
I mean, I'm still in on the draw pan. Yeah, I like the look of Stonewall just to try and find Cthulhu.
Yeah, he hasn't drawn any pieces just yet. And so the Rattlegore goes face, and then it dies finally after the Anchorman goes into the Barov.
What now?
The Rattlegore face is pretty premium. It's just a tiny one, so it can actually remove a charge in a non-painful way.
Strictly better than the 9/9 here.
In terms of how it feels to attack into a bulwark. Yes, it is. Alternatives is just Scorpid and leave the Barov for a while, but I feel like taking the draw is fine where you can, especially since Bankyugi will know about the Kargath Prime in Alutemu's hand now, right? Because of the stage dive.
I can take the hit.
Yeah.
Okay, going for Rancor instead, which means that he leaves the Shield Maiden at a relatively healthy total and is going to go for his own Barov to deal with a potential Kargath Prime. However, I don't think he deals very well against a Rattlegore.
Yeah, I mean, Alutemu, again, you do have to be afraid of the fact that a 5/5 being left on board does just make one extra... It makes it easy to get through another layer of Rattlegore. Like, that's 5 health on the... I don't know, whatever it is. I can't add 9 plus 8 all the way down, but the 5 damage does start to stack up on that quite quickly.
That may be why he is starting with the Rush instead. Bankyugi will have been aware of this. I don't think Alutemu is supposed to play any minions now because it actually gives Bankyugi a way to use Brawl. Although having said that, if you see a Brawl and you have 2 Troublemakers to follow up, then you're pretty happy.
Yeah, it's also the potential of... the Blade Fury as well, just because if they have a rush minion, it will still leave a minion in play.
This Maw is so clutch, though. It means Bankyugi doesn't have to use Barov this turn, which was, again, pretty awkward because he would have to do the thing that Alutemu did, which is use the Bulwark into the 1 health Kargath Prime.
Yeah. And here, okay, Rattlegore coming down does make sense. I was kind of looking at Troublemaker just because you can swing, and then one of the 3/3s can take it out nice and cleanly, but it's time.
It is time. Alutemu is still thinking about the swing because of that for the very next turn, because he knows that the Bulwark will go down to 0 charges next turn anyway, because the 4/4 is very likely to go face, and would have still remained at 4 health.
Yeah, I think you make the clever play here as well of kind of cheating an extra charge out of it, because even though it goes to -1, you still don't take the damage. So I do agree. This is basically just getting a free damage on this turn.
Studies? Unless you want a big buff Barov.
Yeah, that's better than conditioning. I was looking at that first because it is rank 3, but even buff Barov does not quite get the job done.
Oh, another Kargath!
Damn, that's sick.
I mean, Bankyugi's losing on board. Alutemu's problem is Bankyugi has 73 HP,
Yeah.
Very likely 75 after this. So the Rattlegore has to go face like 8 times to be able to deal the lethal. We have troublemakers in the near future as well, but absolutely agree with the use of the Bulwark as well. It's not getting any better than this timing.
This one Scorpid, though, is really annoying because, I mean, obviously if you knew that one of your 3/3s was going to go into it, you'd happily just slam the Troublemaker here, but to guarantee that, do you trade into the Stone Maul here instead?
Does give him the best chance of it, so yeah, 75% of the time the Scorpid is going to die.
You gonna cry?
Okay.
There you go. As the Stone Maul Anchorman knows, 70% of the time, it works every time.
And 33% of the time, the Brawl leaves just the Rattlegore. Mindfield also works here, sure.
Yep, guarantee clear. You even get, what, 1 damage on the 8/8 Rattlegore, which, who knows, it could be relevant with the way that he's going to have to try and chunk through it. But for the moment, Alutemu's plan has worked out great. He dealt with the Rattlegore on the other side. His is going nowhere anytime soon. And so the game plan is to just use this as a battering ram.
Yeah.
Just smash Bankyugi over and over again.
Yeah, having saved the Troublemakers for post-Bulwark is actually super smart as well. I was looking at so many turns for Alutemu to potentially just play this down, but not only has he made it such that Bankyugi has to have Brawl to deal with it, they're also removing charges that, if he had not saved those, would have saved Bankyugi 8 or 7 HP per hit. Okay, that's the best outcome.
Yeah, I guess so. Aside from Troublemaker, it's pretty good just to keep it yet more survivable.
And now Bankyugi just waits. Alutemu has 3 cards left in deck. Vol'jin unplayable at the moment.
Oh no, wait. I was going to say you can use it to get the Rattlegore back to the full 9/9 version, but if you bounce it back to hand, it stays at whatever version it currently is. Just kind of annoying.
Bankyugi can get draw now. He has waited to be able to finally get some draws off of this Outriders Axe. Gets the right piece. Did he concede? No way. Oh, he did.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it looks like it. I guess he didn't see anything better to do there. I mean, fair enough. I guess if you're not seeing the win condition from there. Oh, I've kicked my camera off center there. I was so invested in that Warrior Mirror. There we go. Fun behind the scenes as to how things work here in Grandmasters. You get a peek into my my study. But yeah, it's unfortunate there for Alutemu. I was honestly a bit surprised to see such an early concede there. I still felt like he had maybe some chance of getting the win. But I guess he himself had just thought through it, run the test matches, and realized if Rattlegore doesn't come down right at the start and the Troublemakers don't stick, it's just over.
Yeah, I think he probably had done a lot more math in advance of what we could see there, which is like his Rattlegore would have had to have gone face like, what, 8 times to even get close to beating Bankyugi, by which point Alutemu will have fatigued for 5 pings because he only had 3 cards left in the deck, not even factoring that Bankyugi could armor up every turn, play Cthulhu pieces, maybe even hit Cthulhu itself, and there was still another Kargath Prime in Bankyugi's deck, so most likely Alutemu just did not want to waste any more time there, and if he was conceding that early, then I'm inclined to say it was mathematically impossible for him to win from that point.
And if you listen closely, you can hear Sottle burning a prayer at his shrine to Alutemu because he wishes that he had the kind of player who would just concede a Warrior Mirror that early instead of just playing it out for an extra 50 turns as they would in Europe. Because, again, like... Alutemu knows the matchup way better than we do. He will have done specific practice for matches for that exact scenario, and he will realize there is just no win condition there. So I definitely trust him on that one, that it was worth it to just concede, save us all some time, and move on to the next match. Because now, Gia, he has the OTK Demon Hunter, and again, he has that Ooze teched in there that we've seen from a couple of different practice groups, but could be a real key card in this matchup against the Control Warrior.
Right, we saw it just a while ago from Chonsu, even though it wasn't super relevant in the Rogue matchup. It is a very key card to fit in against Control Warrior, because even if Bankyugi were running that list from Alutemu, which had a lot more of the late game kind of fighting back capability with the Troublemakers and the Vol'jin, then Alutemu would be super scared and not only have to worry about the Bulwark, but also staying alive towards the late game the way that Glory did not give Blitzchung any chance to. Bankyugi's running a much slower and greedier list, so Alutemu will be happy about that, but he also just has the ooze to check even the one counterplay that Bankyugi might have against the Il'gynoth turn, which is the Bulwark of Azzinoth.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like a very, very favorable matchup. Bankyugi quite clearly teched his warrior in a different way to Alutemu, and he has clearly improved his matchup spread in a lot of matchups against Priest. Cthulhu makes all the difference in the world. It's allowed him to actually leave Priest up in a couple of instances so far, although I think he has transitioned safely over to the ban Priest still. Of course, means the warrior mirror, if you're running into any other control warriors, as we saw, is just absolutely super one-sided, almost unwinnable for Alutemu there. But it does make it much worse against the Demon Hunter compared to Alutemu's warrior. You don't have the Vol'jin potential to snipe Il'gynoth or to pull out Rattlegore early. So the early tempo option, especially with no Troublemakers, becomes a lot harder, and he's going to need some kind of a strong tempo option because Alutemu already has Skull in the perfect position.
Indeed. Already looking great for Alutemu. In terms of the early tempo that Bankyugi can put forth, there are Scorpids in the list. It's not quite tempo, but potentially can generate him maybe additional athletic studies, which can give him things like Rokara, additional Kargath primes, and that might be his win condition here. Shield Maiden, also nothing to sniff at now that it's down to 5 mana. Just a decent card to play on curve, and Bankyugi can potentially just get down a Kargath prime a bit early, and I could see that being his win condition. Again, these are all pretty niche though, because I do think Alutemu is in a very favorable position.
And he clearly thinks he's in so favorable of a position that he's keeping what are kind of bad cards in addition to the Skull of Gul'dan. What do you make of the rest of this mulligan?
That's super interesting. Like, if anything, the Ethereal played on one is Alutemu just saying, I don't need this for my combo. Let me dump cards as soon as possible so I can draw cards as soon as possible once the Skull comes down. Have to say, I was really not expecting that though. Maybe he was saying if you don't have the armor vendor, then this is just additional damage that I can get forth on the armor in the early turns. But it just, I've not seen this kind of keep in this matchup ever before.
Yeah, to be fair, a few times when we were testing Control Warrior versus Demon Hunter with me versus Sottle, he did play out the Orc Merchant on one, and if you don't have the Armor Smith, it is likely to push, I don't know, 4, maybe 6 damage before the Outrider's Axe comes down and clears it off, or the Minefield or Whirlwind or whatever. It's not going to do loads, but like you said, it's not going to do much later on, so may as well.
He is saying that this is a superficial combo piece because you do still just have Arcanist, you can have Moarg in this matchup. You are very easily able to wait for the Moarg to be post Raging Fell Screamer, and you don't need to spend that discount almost ever because you're hardly under any pressure. So Alutemu very likely will have just mapped this out and said that in most iterations of the combo and for most breakpoints, I don't need the Ethereal Aug Merchant, so I'm going to go ahead and dump it here, make sure that the Skull can come down completely uninterrupted in the later turns.
Quite right too. Bankyugi picking up War Cash off of the Scorpid. I believe we've already seen War Cash into Bulwark of Azzinoth once in this matchup already this week in GM, with Wama getting it against Yala, I believe. Again, correct me if I'm mistaken. But it has the potential for that huge upside. And also just basically any way that you can try and generate some pressure. War Cash gives you the slim chance for that to happen, which you will gladly take.
In the meantime, though, Bankyugi just going to get the Shield Maiden down. That's a pretty decently sized minion for this point of the game. It's tough for Alutemu to deal with. And he certainly has the capability with the I-Beam and the Talented Arcanist, but that's probably not even worth it, right? The Arcanist is a combo piece that you do want to keep. You don't need both necessarily, especially if one is already guaranteed to not be discounted. But he's not even gonna heal for anything, so I think it's fine to just go for the 4/4 here.
I mean, you always have to...
Unfortunately, no way to maneuver the Outriders to actually give Bankyugi a draw here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at that. I was kind of also looking at Rancor to try and gain armor, but I think, I mean, it's already worth mentioning at this point that if Alutemu is playing this correctly and doesn't get the most abysmal draws possible, where he reduces no combo pieces, there's basically no amount of armor that actually gets there, because they just deal 70 damage and then you die.
Oh, and he gets the Moarg discounted as well. So that means all the philosophies are generating zero-cost Moargs. That's already meaning that Bankyugi cannot get out of any relevant breakpoints.
Yep, it's literally just a case now of Alutemu needing to hit the card draw. Bankyugi has the slim chance, again, he's been given the window to try and out-pressure Alutemu at this point. It's so unlikely to get there. This is such a disastrous matchup. It really does feel like it's all down to that Bulwark of Azzinoth. But the opportunity is here, because Alutemu does not have an insta-game winning hand quite yet. He needs the card draw first.
He needs literally just Il'gynoth. Everything else is there. He has I-Beam, Arcanist, 3 Moargs, and Telescreep Blast. This is insane, but it's true. Il'gynoth could be anywhere in these 17 remaining cards, and Bankyugi is starting to put on some pressure, so Alutemu is likely to use some of his removal. Chaos Strike is a great way to get the card draw rolling, especially since he has this Warblades of Azzinoth.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
Warblade, sorry.
pretty sick, right? Just to be able to push a lot of damage, 15 more in hand. Like, again, Alutemu is not out of the woods quite yet.
Right, but he can, if he wants to, invest 1 I-Beam and 1 Moarg into this Shield Maiden. It's probably worth it. Too bad that he can't throw Glaive with Moarg. If you could do that over I-Beam, I think you would rather, but it's just 1 damage short of being able to solo the Shield Maiden.
Yeah, I kind of like actually just using the I-Beam here. Again, you want to play the right-hand Moarg. You actively want to get rid of it because that is the one that is reduced from the Raging Fell Screamer. It does not cost 0, so you really don't want to copy that one with the philosophies.
Right, yeah. Small optimizations, I have tripped up on that many times. OTK Demon Hunter. It's not a small optimization. It is a clear blunder if you go for the other Moarg first, or like philosophy first and accidentally copy the wrong Moarg.
Yeah. And again, while it was a very, I mean, it's a nice play still, obviously, for Bankyugi to get 20 damage off of this Outrider's Axe. Ooh. Maybe more with a Krusty as well. That's a premium pickup here.
Eat your heart out, Weapon Rogue. I think Bankyugi's just transforming into a pure Weapon Burst deck now.
Oh, he's going for the draw. Okay. I mean, the two options were either say, maybe I get there with Burst, because or with Burn, sorry, which maybe works, you know, if you can get Eye of Cthulhu to deal the extra damage it could have got there, or draw for Bulwark, which is what he's going for here.
Yeah, fair enough. If he gets the Bulwark, that means Alutemu doesn't need just Il'gynoth, he needs the Ooze as well. Oh, he just has infinite healing here, not damage.
If he gets Il'gynoth, this is actually, for the first time, a quadrillion damage, and I'm not even exaggerating.
Yeah.
1 quadrillion.
We can count it up. There's 3 Moargs and 2 talented Arcanists, so a single Fell Scream Blast is +4 spell damage, which means it's dealing 5 to each minion, and then you triple that, 15, and then you double that.
So 120?
Yeah, I think so.
Sounds like lethal to me.
Sounds like a trillion to me. And that's only 1 Fell Scream. There's still another Fell Scream. And he actually has enough minions to use it all on as well. Although the second Fell Scream won't have the talented Arcanist buffs on it. However, Alutemu is kind of just dying. He needs to heal.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, using the first Fell Screamer is fine. I mean, he could even use 1 Fell Screamer and 1 Talented Arcanist, right? Or 1 Moa.
Yeah.
It's still perfectly fine for him to do that. He will still have absurd amounts of damage.
Right. Bankyugi has not hit the body of Cthulhu, though, which is the piece he really wanted here to just present any type of more pressure. Is he going for the heart just to dump a card? Oh, that's awful. I think Alutemu was super happy to see that.
Oh, you're ecstatic, right? Was that really better than just going Sword Eater?
Yeah, I don't know. Or even re-equip Outriders.
Yeah.
Strange.
Okay. Another dead card here for Alutemu. Again, it's 1 card he needs to instantly win the game.
And a lot of cards draw him cards into that Il'gynoth. Okay, there's the Bulwark. Bankyugi's like, how close am I to dying here? It's really difficult to have a read on this. Bulwark is not the same as Illusia, where Illusia, if you just dump any amount of combo cards, it's fine. The Bulwark needs to be timed for when the Il'gynoth is coming down.
I mean, they've done
a couple turns earlier.
They've done nothing for like 4 turns. They've played double Philosophy. You know it's on the 0-mana Moarg, right? Because of the animation. Or, I mean, at the very least, you can have a good read at it. And so you have to expect that you are going to be dead. And it's just like one combo piece missing. Maybe it's the Fell Screams. Maybe it's the Arcanist. Maybe it's the Il'gynoth, more likely. But I think playing the Bulwark here, maybe you have to get lucky and just say, I have to wait a couple more turns anyway, or I've just lost. But I feel like it kind of is time to get it down.
The problem is, if you play the Bulwark, you cannot start pressuring Alutemu with the other weapons, which,
True.
for Bankyugi's perspective, if you go Bulwark and Alutemu just takes this down over 4 turns, Bankyugi is not pressuring any type of lethal. If he had Rattlegore or Kargath Prime to follow this up, I think absolutely, but he just cannot push any more damage by playing this card. Oh, okay, time to dump some things. Goodbye, Throwglaive. Hello, Skull.
Yeah, you're just going Arcanist, Throwglaive, Skull.
Yeah.
Sounds good, yeah. Well, the Throwglaive doesn't actually delete a card from your hand, right? Because you get the Phantom version back. That's a little more awkward.
One Fell Scream? Don't need it. That's fine. He literally does not lead it. Look at this. It's 3 Moargs, Darok. It's fine.
Right, but maybe it's a proc of the...
Poor warlock.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a proc on the Bulwark of Azzinoth is maybe the concern.
Oh, sorry. He even had 7 after this, so he didn't even need to start with any proc. That's fine. Now he potentially has to dump the Throwglaive, and he can, because it will disappear at the end of the turn. This is just better.
Yep. No, very, very nicely done. I-beam, dump it, don't die. Sure.
Yep.
Oh my god, still
Looking
gets
for
more card draw.
Ooze. Looking for Ilgi. There's the Ilgi. Now just needs the Ooze. Or just to wait. Another Bulwark?
That's where we're at.
Hand space.
Yeah,
Okay.
dump the minefield. Then you're at 8 cards. You can play War Cash now. What's in the box?
War Song Command. Oh.
Hilarious. Honestly, I've kind of forgotten that that's actually what it does now, and that it's not just
Right.
give your attack charge minions +1 attack.
The voice line is now rush forward. I wish. Okay, last 5 cards in Alutemu's deck are 2 Immolation Auras, an Ooze, Chaos Strike, and Spectral Sight.
Oi, oi, oi. This, honestly, is pretty close to guaranteed lethal. It's not, because I think of slight mana restrictions.
Right, I think so too. Wait, actually, if he gets the Ooze right now, I think he can. Oh, no, he wouldn't be able to play the Talented Arcanist.
Still a little ways off, but he's still chipping away.
Yeah, and the best part for Alutemu is he doesn't even have to play the Ooze this turn.
Right.
He literally needs nothing more than what's already in hand. And so he's able to check second Bulwark in that way as well, because he discounted the Moargs and because he has all the rest of the combo for super cheap.
You're absolutely right. Very, very clever optimization. The one thing he could be afraid of is Eye off the top. And is there any weapon alongside that could kill him? With the fatigue factored in? I don't think so.
If Bankyugi had more mana with the Gore Howl, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
But just not happening. So Bankyugi here just gonna play 0 minions, you have to assume, and then pray that Alutemu somehow messes up, but it never gets there.
Yeah, I mean, he literally knows that Ooze is in hand now. Maybe, like you said, if he hasn't discounted any combo pieces, you can pray that it's enough to get there. We know it's not.
Let's just count the damage. It's obviously lethal, but it's not 120. It's like 3 damage per minion, so 9, and then double.
Yeah, it's
72.
Yeah. And then
change
with the second Fell Screen Blast as well. Like, it's so lethal, it's not even close.
I don't think he has mana to play both. Oh, he does, right?
Yeah.
He can play both.
Yeah. And it is just going to be game. Bankyugi doing everything he could. I think his timing on the Bulwark was good enough, to be honest. But with an Ooze in the list and a timely Skull coming just at the right opportunity for Alutemu to lock this one out. It's just how the matchup goes. It's brutally unfavored for Control Warrior. And honestly, the fact that we've seen Glory win this matchup already today is a bit of an outlier.
That's very true, although the list is very different from Bankyugi compared to the Control Warriors that Alutemu, Glory, and Possessi are bringing. And I think that is definitely a big factor as to their success so far. It covers their biggest theoretical weakness in terms of lineup building, which is OTK Demon Hunter. However, I don't think Bankyugi really expected to get more than one win with that Control Warrior of his. He still has this Libram Paladin, though, which I think is the ace in the hole. Traditionally has had a decent matchup against Demon Hunter, and we've already seen Bankyugi pick apart this deck yesterday when he faced his opponent.
Yeah, we have. And I do agree. I think it's a favored matchup for the Libram Paladin. But, you know, we've got to bear in mind that this is not aggro Paladin, right? This can't go Crab Rider, or old school Crab Rider, I guess, into Hand of Adult to just instantly win the game and just burst them down, or get down a huge Blessing of Authority that Demon Hunter can never deal with. It's a mid-range deck, it puts on pressure, but it doesn't just demolish the game right from the get-go. So I think for Alutemu, still make no mistake, if he gets an early Skull, you're still looking at a potential lethal on turn 7 or 8, and it's kind of difficult for Paladin to get enough of a dominant start to win the game before that point.
Indeed. I will say that the Omayo can come in pretty clutch in the matchup as well if you're able to time that into their Skull turn, especially if they've invested Illidari Studies prior to that to play Skull for 5 mana or something. You can really trip them up with an Omayog and force them to test for spells, and sometimes just the bluff of the other secrets can be very disruptive to Demon Hunter. So I think overall, Bankyugi has not only the aggressive tools to approach the matchup, he's got quite a bit of disruption as well, and Alutemu will have to be on point in order to win this matchup, because a while ago he was under pretty much no threat of pressure until that Shield Maiden for 7 attack came down, and after that was removed, he was free to wait for the Il'gynoth.
He was just super favored because he had all the time in the world. But, you know, like I was saying, this is a mid-range deck. It will start to pile on the pressure once the Librams of Hope come down. Probably around turn 7 or 8, usually, is I think when you're looking at it on average. But if he can get exactly the curve of all those key cards that I was laying out, a turn 6 Libram of Hope can, of course, be just locking out the game against Demon Hunter already. So we'll have to see what kind of a hand Bankyugi is going for. You can prioritize, obviously, the Aldor Truth Seeker in order to go for a more mid-range start, but you could also prioritize the Secret Passage, the Knight of Anointment to draw you all these buff cards, Northwatch Commander, very importantly, to get a big stat on the board, and Sword of the Fallen just to disrupt the Demon Hunter. It's two different parts of the deck, but they work together with enough synergy, I think, to disrupt the Demon Hunter quite often.
And the card that really ties it all together, in my opinion, is Cariel Rome, because she discounts not only your Libram cards, but also things like Hand of Adal, and is just a solid body on the board that needs to get I-beam pretty much immediately as soon as she appears. For Alutemu, keeping the Double Jump and Illidari Studies, both cards that have the potential to give him Skull of Gul'dan.
Yeah, not a great hand, but not a disastrous one. And Bankyugi, this hand was looking mighty scary before he found himself an Aldor Attendant, which just ties it all together. It goes from garbage to insane.
At least the right-hand cards. He was definitely thrown a bone by the card off his deck there, and he absolutely needs it because Alutemu is getting the draw started here. Nothing too insane. I think we're seeing more and more people just keep and play Double Jump when they have the mana available, because you're unlikely to get specifically Skull, and even if you do get Spectral Sight and it's not outcasted, a lot of the time you're happy playing it for one card draw. Bankyugi here going to get the buffs rolling, and still could be a bit of a disaster in the next coming turns if he doesn't hit something that he can curve out with.
Yeah, he's definitely going to need a little bit more. 3-5 is good in the early game, but against a deck that doesn't trade, the extra health doesn't make that much difference. It of course means it can't be I-beamed away, but it's not the absolute auto-win that it is in a lot of other tempo matchups. And so now for Bankyugi, the real question is, how am I using this Oh My Yogg? Do you save it specifically for turn 5 because you're expecting Coin Skull, but then you can't play your Aldor Truthseeker? It's kind of an awkward hand in terms of the secret.
Yeah, this is super awkward because Bankyugi really wants to go Aldor Truthseeker turn 5 into Libram of Hope turn 6.
Yeah.
And so the Oh My Yogg either comes down this turn or next, and both of those, Alutemu is pretty likely to have held onto the coin. I don't mind waiting one more turn, because if you see the coin next turn, then the Oh My Yogg feels a little bit more powerful to disrupt, maybe not necessarily Skull, but something marginally more important, like a Studies or even an Immolation Aura compared to just the coin.
Yeah, I think the only time that you are sad is if you get Carriel Roam to just perfectly fill out your 4-mana turn. And even then, that might cheapen the Libram of Hope to 5 mana to the point where you can go Aldor Truthseeker into Libram plus Yogg as well on turn 6 anyway. So I think it's very reasonable, as you laid out, to hold on to the Yogg for 1 extra turn. But the question on the other side for Alutemu really is, can this Skull ever get over to the left-hand side in any kind of a reasonable fashion? To which the answer is maybe. It's not impossible.
Yeah, it can. These are all cards that are somewhat redundant in terms of getting the full combo off for Alutemu on the left. He can dump 1 Moarg and 1 Fellscream, especially since he has the other Fellscream already in hand. Problem is, it's going to take a while to get all of that online.
Yeah.
Although having said that, he could potentially go like Fellscream this turn into Moarg with the Immolation next turn, and then Coin Skull. He will have a discount as well.
Right. I mean, with the terms of the discount, you could just use it immediately on the I-beam, because you still have the option, as you said, to go Coin Skull, even if you don't have it for 5 mana on turn 5. On turn 6. But yeah, decided to go for it this way.
Yeah, I mean, not using the discount here means that he can't get the Skull Turboed on turn 5, but he holds onto the coin, which is pretty relevant against a deck that plays Oh My Yogg. So I don't begrudge Alutemu that whatsoever. And also just holding onto Immolation Aura probably more valuable in the long run, because this Paladin is starting to put on some pressure.
Very clean top deck from Bankyugi makes him happy he held onto the Oh My Yogg, and makes him very happy to play it down now, even if it's not likely to get a whole bunch of value. It just makes things a little more awkward for Alutemu, because to be fair, he doesn't want to use the coin here.
He doesn't. And beyond Oh My Yogg, there's also Galloping Savior to worry about, potentially, for Alutemu. Demon Hunter will generally place 3 cards or more in a turn when they're going for these big board sweeps. And Alutemu can potentially say, if it's not Oh My Yogg, then I'm a bit happy to go for Moarg and Immolation Aura here. Problem is, there's 2 Oh My Yoggs, whereas 1 secret for all the rest of them, and that is just more likely to be Oh My Yogg. So maybe he does just start with the coin still. And say if it's galloping, then you got me, Bankyugi.
Time grows short. Demon.
His instinct was to start with the Raging Fellscreamer, but I feel that's maybe too passive for this turn.
Yeah, I agree, especially if there's some other kind of disruption next turn. Like, what if this is the, like you said, the Galloping Savior, and then you're not able to play it down to clear the board next turn? It's a decent outcome, though. Nothing went disastrously wrong.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. By starting with the coin, with the Throwglaive instead of the coin, I think Alutemu made it in such a way that if it's Oh My Yogg, then he could still go for just this, the Immolation Aura, then save Moarg. And if it's Galloping Savior, he could have gone Throwglaive into coin, then Moarg, which would proc the Galloping, and end with the Immolation Aura, which would have swept everything up.
Good point. Good catch.
Doesn't change the fact that this is very awkward now, though, having to, well, no I-beam to get rid of this 4/6.
Yeah. I mean, it's just about as bad as things can go for Alutemu. Bankyugi only really floated 1 turn on turn 3, and every other mana point has been spent on great proactive cards. It means Libram's coming down next turn for another 8/8 with Divine Shield and Taunt, a nightmare for Demon Hunter to deal with. currently struggle to see an avenue to victory for Alutemu. He's just going to be under too much pressure.
I do too, but he does have a way to set up for Skull on the left next turn. It would involve using 2 Morgs and coining a Fell Scream here, which would leave a 4-2 Eldar Truthseeker on the board. But he will have 2 Morgs on board at that time, which is not terrible. You know, like the Paladin doesn't have targeted spells to deal with the Morgs taking advantage of their own card text. And the most important thing is Alutemu will have his Skull on the far left by that point. He might be interested in saving the coin in case of second Oh My Yogg, so he's just going for 1 Morg to begin with.
Yeah, this achieves a similar effect. Obviously, it means you don't get to stick a Moog on the board next turn, but it means you still have an extra mana to work with on the Skull turn next turn. Not entirely sure how relevant that's going to be. But either way, it has to be the play now, of course, with the Skull. You could consider I-Beam first, I suppose, but with double Moog in hand, I think that's going to get more use, even if it's unoutcasted.
Right. I don't think the 3 damage achieves very much on this board state, so coin Skull. And in terms of best possible outcomes for Alutemu, oh man, I am struggling to see it because even if he gets second Immolation Aura, he can't fit in any of the Morgs he already has in hand. So he probably just resigns himself to taking 12 damage and then hopefully will have a bigger board clear available post-Skull. And I think that's a pretty reasonable assumption.
Agreed.
Here we go. This has to be big money for Alutemu because we are entering the point of the game where the pressure for Paladin just piles higher and higher, but Alutemu is cheering. What did he get? You got the what? Is this lethal next turn?
Yes, it is.
36 next turn, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 30. Why? Why does this happen?
He's just won.
Why is this a thing?
I mean, there I thought, when he was cheering, I thought, oh, he's hit a board clear. That's pretty good. He may have an avenue back into the game. Foolish, small-minded mortal that I am. Alutemu is literally just won the game.
Oh my God. Does Oh My Yogg do anything? Oh My Yogg does something, right? Yes.
True.
Oh wait, but can the I-Beam go in? Oh, he got double jump, so he has the mana to do it now. Oh
yeah.
My goodness. It's perfect. 6 mana remaining.
Just needs to not be, 1 mana, turn your hand into demons and he'll be fine.
That's a thing? I thought that was a 2 mana. I don't know.
Oh, is it 2 mana?
So. I don't know. Bankyugi is dumbfounded, and frankly, you cannot blame him. Sometimes Demon Hunter does just do things like this. 36 damage out of nowhere. Alutemu, who is in a tough spot against that curve from Bankyugi, takes the victory.
Yeah, I mean, it is brutal for Bankyugi, but if you want to call it, generously a 60-40 matchup for the Paladin, probably closer to like 55%, that's the percentage where you win as Demon Hunter. You have to get the lethal on turns like 7 or 8, because otherwise the Paladin just pressures you too much with the Libram of Judgment that was coming down as well, in addition to the Libram of Hope. So much pressure. But Alutemu kept the dream alive by holding on to an extra Moog. It did give him this fringe out, and I think it was just brilliant play consistently from Alutemu. He knew that that was one of his fringe possibilities to win the game and played exactly to it and was rewarded.
I could honestly compare it to how Blitzchung was on the Token Druid last week in terms of, yes, your deck has to be very cooperative, and yes, you do have to believe in the deck, but to be able to get the exact results that these two players have been putting forward, you need to give yourself the highest percentage every single time and make sure that when you do get good draws, they are within a window of opportunity that you created for yourself. And that is obviously a huge downer for Bankyugi because he loses the favorable matchup, and in LHS, that's often just a death sentence. But he still has his last hope in the Spell Mage. There's a lunacy in the list, so nothing is impossible, Derek.
Nothing is impossible indeed. And it's still not a disastrous matchup, even if you don't, of course, hit the deck of Lunacy, because you can still burst your opponent down before they kill you. It's difficult to do, of course, but if you can get Incanta's Flow and then go Mask of Cthulhu on turns 6 and 7, or maybe even like turns 5 or 6 in the fringe scenarios, there's very little to stand in the way of all that damage. So you can get there with the burn plan, but do you see, as a mage expert, that Deck of Lunacy is probably the best chance?
Really depends on how much card draw he has to follow it up, but I can certainly see it being useful in the matchup. I find that the trickiest thing for Spell Mage here is how to get that additional damage, because just burn often doesn't get there quick enough from your minions in such a way that you don't just feed them a way to heal back up with the Fell Screen Blast / Eye Beam. I find it very difficult to strike that balance from the mage perspective, and there is not much you can do in terms of disruption, but sometimes if you can generate counter spell from Ring Toss or from a discovered spell off of Ruined Orb, that can be pretty crucial in the matchup as well.
It can. It can be a big, big difference to turn things around. But so far, I got to be honest, I think Alutemu has just been playing lights out on the Demon Hunter. And also, it just feels like another instance of correct meta read and deck building from Alutemu. I think the Ooze in the list feels very important this week. Again, it's kind of, I mean, it's not obviously cheating, but it's getting a bit of an advantage in terms of reading what the meta will be. Because if you're preparing with 2 other players who are bringing Control Warrior, you know at least some percentage of the field is going to be Control Warrior, especially if you all predict you're going to do very well, which turns out, hey, that's exactly what happened. And so far, a bunch of the players in the top 8 or top 4 soon to be are playing Control Warrior. But again, Demon Hunter just very, very strong in the metagame, and a very well-teched build from Alutemu puts him in a good spot.
Absolutely. The Ooze not going to be super useful against Mage, but again,
Yep.
the Ooze in that one slot I don't think is overly hurting him that much, especially these builds with Throw Glaive, I think, give the Demon Hunter a lot more flexibility in terms of the number of AoE that they're able to throw away, and also because we're seeing Alutemu just throw out Ethereal Aug Merchant on one and say that I don't need this, then you're fine cutting one copy for an Ooze anyway. As for Bankyugi, though, the Mage still has its teeth in the matchup for sure, because Mask of Cthulhu in particular is something that Demon Hunter struggles to play around, because they can't just put very much minion pressure on the board that can eat some of the damage. And if they put a Moarg on board, well, they're going to be eating 2 damage per ping of the Mask.
Ooh, okay. That's a hand for Bankyugi. Not obviously quite so terribly broken as if it was still the 4-mana Spring Water, but it's doing all the important things and getting some decent drops here as well. Firebrand for a 3-drop, Mozaki for some kind of a huge combo later on. Hey, it's possible.
Yo, that's pretty good from Bankyugi. All he really needs is a turn 4, and at worst we could just see something like Cram Session and Ruined Orb.
Yeah.
And Mozaki in the matchup, I find it's very difficult to actually get off all the damage in one turn, especially with the nerf to Spring Water. But just play it on turn 5 as an 8 health minion that must be removed lest Alutemu incur the wrath of infinite spell damage. It's really tough to deal with for Demon Hunter. Just Moarg Eye Beam is not enough to deal with that.
I don't think I'm seeing enough use for Stelina, even as it would be quite difficult to outcast it. So let's just keep the draw rolling. Il'gynoth, it's not a great top deck because it does, of course, make things harder to outcast. But to be fair, he literally has every combo piece in hand right now. He just needs mana to be able to play it all. And it's going to take a lot more mana, of course. We're looking at like an 8, 9, 10 turn combo, or turn 8, 9, 10. But it's there.
No discounts for Alutemu makes a big difference, though he already also just used one philosophy. You sometimes see Demon Hunter players hold on to that for the case that if they draw second Moarg and it's discounted off Skull, then you'd much rather have held the philosophy for that. But I think Alutemu is right to spend the mana while it's available, because 1, he doesn't even have Skull to begin with, and 2, they're not that likely to hit second Moarg off of Skull.
I think I do still like clearing off the Flame Ward here, or the Firebrand, sorry. You do need to be afraid of damage coming in from the other side, of course, but it's worth bringing up the point that if he can chip his opponent down to like 24, you're very possibly looking at a 2-turn earlier combo, because you might just need 1 Moarg rather than the 2 Moargs, which can obviously massively change your breakpoints.
It's true, especially since he has both I-Beam and Fell Scream Blast, but the math begins to get a bit weird because there might not be minions on the board to get both of those done, and also the Talented Arcanist will only lend you help for the first spell. You can get into that a bit more later though, because Bankyugi is picking up Flurry just as a dumpable spell. I think is actually super heads up here. It also has some synergy with the Mozaki. He just does not have time to play other things.
I mean, if he's allowed to just play Mozaki next turn, which, I mean, there's not much that Alutemu can do that would stop him from doing that. He's starting to build up a lot of damage. Like, you could definitely make that argument that it was still correct to go for the evocation, but with extra card draw already in hand, I like it.
Oh, this draw as well. I mean, Mozaki and Devolving was already pretty strong,
Yeah, that's
but sometimes that 1 damage breakpoint allows Alutemu to clear, but Mozaki for tempo and a completely clear board. This is not easy for Alutemu to deal with. He can kill it, but it takes a lot of combo pieces.
Yeah, it's a little bit less devastating now. He could just go Moarg and the Orc Merchant and then I-Beam to kill it off instead.
Yeah, or Moarg I-Beam Throwglaive if he wants to hold on to Orc
True.
Merchant.
Yeah, that's true as well. That might actually be better just to dump a harder to use card.
Yes. But I think Bankyugi would be happy with this outcome on average. It's using an I-Beam and a Moarg from Alutemu's side of the board, and then he gets to just continue with the refreshing spring water.
Okay, he's going with the Orc Merchant. I still think it's very close between the two, because to be fair, Throwglaive can be a decent card just to clear off if they do make some kind of a board presence, whereas the extra spell damage here when you already have the Arcanist is very arguably, yes, less useful.
Oh, flow into spring water. I was gonna say this looks like a pretty decent just mask turn because it's gonna clear everything, but with the flow, then you go for the spring water and delay the mask. Okay, so we've seen 2 flows. So Lunacy at this point, I'm not really sure if it's any good.
Pretty bad, right? Yeah. Like, all of your lovely 10-cost spells go to 8-cost spells, and 8-cost spells are not good. A bunch of them are very weak.
Yeah, terrible. The mana works out super awkward for Bankyugi now as well because he can't corrupt the ring toss before playing Mask, and so he's probably going to float 1 more mana next turn, and then he wants to play the ring toss in order to draw the most he can from Sage.
There's no way you can... Nah, even with the coining out, it just has to be un-outcasted Skull, which sucks. But again, Alutemu has the combo. This is the important thing. It's still ready to go. He just has to be able to bide the time to get there.
Yeah, we're looking for Raging Fell Screamer now for Alutemu in order to be able to use this hand for immediate lethal. As it stands, once he gets to, what's this, 9 mana or 8, if he holds onto the coin, he already has 18. And then you could just say equip the Eldraki prior to that and chip Bankyugi down to 24, where on 10 mana you're able to do the whole thing without discounts. But it might be unrealistic because he's either under too much pressure or Bankyugi has like put minions on board by that point. And so I think Fell Screamer is really what Alutemu is looking for to make it such that Moarg can come down alongside another one in 1 turn.
No, that's a great point. Rigged Fair Game, while it's obviously the one that you want here for Bankyugi, it's just, I think, not going to be going off enough ever. So he does go for Ice Barrier, which at the very least, I guess, stops Alutemu from hero powering face every turn. But the problem is, of course, that's quite a hard one.
Oh no! That was the card he needed!
Yeah. Okay, that's a big deal.
Right, because now the most Alutemu can do in 1 turn is actually still 36 if he holds onto the coin.
Still gets there, it's fine. But it's a ways off now. It's a long ways off.
That's all the way to turn 10, and he has to have the coin for that entire time. By picking Ice Barrier, Bankyugi has also shut off Alutemu's option of chipping him down to 24 to make it such that the Eldraki Warblades plus the 18 from single Moarg combo is enough to get there. Bankyugi has a lot of time now, and he's very likely going to draw several cards from the Sage.
Okay, proc the counterspell, that's fine. Now you can play quite happily the Spectral Sight. You, I think, can still get away with swinging here if you wanted to, because you still have that 36 damage combo, which is exactly... oh, sorry, you're setting them to below that, at least. And you gain a little bit of extra health. You're going to have to gain some health over the course of this game, I think.
I think the bigger thing is Alutemu also wanted to deny a possible rigged fair game. That's just too big.
That's true.
He cannot
Yeah,
give
point.
Bankyugi more draws. But it's also super important to note that, yes, Alutemu can still get beyond this breakpoint. It just takes a long time now that he's burned pretty much all his discount possibilities, because he's also just got no more Moargs in the deck.
This is so much damage coming through. With the Spring Water, we're even potentially looking at double Mask on the same turn for Bankyugi if he wants to go down that route. But obviously, with Fireball still in the deck, Runed Orb, it's going to be difficult for Alutemu to survive till that turn 10.
But it's another situation where the nerf to Spring Water comes in pretty huge here, because Bankyugi defaults to Font of Power instead of potentially having drawn more cards and played like an Apexis Blast off the top. It's all the difference one turn can make in this matchup. Alutemu figuring out a way to survive until turn 10. Doable for sure, but he cannot spend the Moarg at this point. That is his last Moarg, and he needs both copies with Philosophy. I will say there's still one more talented Arcanist in the deck, which means that potentially he can spend the Arcanist or try to discount that next one with Skull of Gul'dan. It's kind of a lot to ask for, though, so this is just such an awkward position.
It's really close, because there's obviously a very strong play with just like, well, if you wanted to go Arcanist plus Immolation Aura, that's fine, or Arcanist Fell Scream Blast plus the Throw Glaive as well, if you want to clear some extra hand space, but then you are running into over-healing territory. You don't want to waste healing. It's tough.
It might just be like talented Arcanist, Immolation Aura, and then end with the Ooze. So he's ahead on board.
Yeah, okay.
Has, second Arcanist in the deck at some point he will need. Although it means that if he doesn't get it by turn 10, his combo is even farther away from where it initially was. You can already see Alutemu wincing, thinking about if he could have gotten any better breakpoints there. I'm not sure I saw it, because if he gives Bankyugi any board presence, then he might just be dead in the near future.
Right. I mean, we of course need to talk about the point that he does still have 24 with the double Fell Scream, double Moarg play available, which he could do next turn, right? With the mana available.
If there are minions on board.
If there are minions, yes, of course. And even then, it wouldn't be lethal quite yet. But it's always something to bear in mind in case Bankyugi overextends and shoots himself in the face. I don't know.
I'm going to go ahead and say that's not going to happen. What Bankyugi can do, though, is shoot Alutemu in the face for 16.
Oh, yeah. That sounds good to me.
Sometimes even 17 if he gets lap partner. Although playing minions at this point is probably just actively bad for Bankyugi. I'd like to see him hold on to Apexis Blast where he can. Mini-Mage, reasonable. Not necessarily for this turn, though. I think it's still just the 6-mana Mask. Yep. Very clean.
Just awkward. Next turn you have Mask, Apexis, plus the Mini-Mage, all in one fell swoop. The Blades for Alutemu are not enough to keep him alive on its own. At 16, he will just be dead next turn to all of this damage from Bankyugi. It's like 1 over lethal.
But he cannot afford to throw anything else. Like, you could say 1 Fell Scream Blast, but there's no targets unless he puts a Moarg on the board, by which point he is giving up any OTK win condition. So Alutemu is just gonna pray that the damage isn't there from Bankyugi, but he set it up perfectly well. This is going all the way to Game 5, Dark.
Such a nail-biter of a series, and bit of a heartbreaker for Alutemu. He got that really weird kind of hand, again, where, you know, you say, oh, Il'gynoth in the starting hand, that's garbage, but it was almost there. You would obviously rather hit the early skull, the card draw, and all that kind of stuff to get the combo on turn 7 or 8, but it was a valiant effort, almost got there, but for Bankyugi, too much damage. The mage close to peak efficiency with both the Incantus flows coming nice and early for him, so that means the mage gets another shot at it here, last hero standing, and the final matchup that we have, Gia, the definitive matchup, I think, of last week in Specialist. It's Token Druid Druid against Spell Mage for all the marbles.
Oh my goodness. Somehow we end up back here, Darek. I also just want to go back to this moment from Alutemu because you could have had some people saying, oh, why didn't Alutemu just dump the coin so that he wouldn't overdraw? I think that on average, if you overdraw any card but the Raging Fell Screamer, you are fine in this matchup. And holding onto the coin means that he can deal the lethal one turn sooner, also hold on to a potential proc for counter spell if that's generated from Bankyugi's side. It was pretty unlucky to have that be the exact card he overdrew. But then again, it's your just desserts because on OTK Demon Hunter, sometimes Il'gynoth being the one card you discount is the only card that can win you the game.
Swings and roundabouts, it's tough to predict all of this stuff, but finally the Demon Hunter is felled, and so Alutemu is going to have to try his luck with the trees instead. Classic token druid, no deviations away from the standard list, pretty much just exactly what Blitzchung has been playing to great success for week on week, or rather until he lost earlier today against Glory. And again, with the factoring in the mage list from Bankyugi, I do think that it's a very good matchup, or a good matchup, I will say. I won't go too extreme for Alutemu. There's one shooting star in there, which does help to deal with some of the early boards. But at the same time, it's still just so difficult, I feel, for Mage to consistently fight back against a turn 3 or 4 Glowfly.
It is just too fast. I will say, once again, Deck of Lunacy has potential to be played in this matchup. And that's highly dependent on just how fast Alutemu goes, though. Like, we've seen Possessi toss the card in the mulligan in this exact matchup. I think largely informed by his experience one game where he had it in the opening hand, and there just wasn't time to play it because there were too many Glowflies facing him off. It is really dependent on each exact situation. And as for Bankyugi, of course, what he's still mainly looking for is the Incanter's Flow. The nerf to Springwater, I think, is very big in this matchup as well, because having that one extra mana to work with to fit in like a cheapened Rune Orb, to fit in a cheapened Combustion, to fit in a Ring Toss can be all the difference between surviving and dying the very next turn to an Arbor Up.
Very true. Very, very true. It's so difficult to find that balance because, again, in testing, I, as a mage noob, was advocating more heavily for keeping some of those cards, like you were saying, that can be very important in the matchup, to be fair to me. Like the like the Combustion, the Shooting Star as well. But in the end, the win rates of the good cards in Cantor's Flow, Deck of Lunacy, so much higher than anything else. So even here, are you expecting a full mull from Bankyugi?
Yes, I am. If that's to be following the surrender school of thought, at least, where proactive in the early game is what you want in the matchup. If there's any card that I could understand keeping here, it's potentially even Devolving Missiles, because that's kind of the unique card that can deal with a board that's already been buffed by Pride's Fury / Soul of the Forest. But even then, it comes too late it becomes useful so late in the game where I would rather just have him mull for proactive things like Font of Power and, of course, Incanter's Flow.
It hurts my soul to see mulliganing away some of the best cards in the matchup, but I, of course, agree with you in the end and will defer to you, and in this case, Bankyugi as well, as you hit the absolute juice with this hand. That is more like it. Even the Combustion as well. Oh.
Honestly, even the Flame Strike is worth looking at.
Yeah.
Because that's in the opening hand, I fully expect Bankyugi to save the coin here. Even if he didn't have this Primordial Studies to start with, I think you're supposed to save the coin in this position. And if you get Lab Partner off of Studies to start with, that's premium because it can just get on board early, very unlikely to be dealt with. There's reasons for holding it if you get exactly Cram Session, but I'm honestly a fan of just playing it down because it also kind of somewhat denies Gibberling starts.
That's kind of true. The problem is that it's the only thing in the early game that you're going to play that they can Lunar Eclipse. And so unless you're going to get another minion, I actually do just like holding on to it. I think it's worth it. Like, the chance of hitting Shooting Star is worth it to hold on to the Lab Partner, in my opinion. Or Cram Session as well, as you said.
Yeah. Interesting that he chooses to play it here, though, because I think if you're going to hold it, then you do hold it until you hit one of those things.
Right, yeah.
For me, if it gets Lunar Eclipsed on turn 2, then you're kind of okay with that. That's probably their entire turn. Lunar Eclipse is a card of, like, if you wait and delay one turn, it doesn't change anything because Alutemu can still just play Fungal Fortunes.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't have to Lunar Eclipse it on that turn, though, right? They just Lunar Eclipse it on the turn that they go in, because leaving it in play is only bad in the case of Cram Session, which, again, you know, we can argue back and forth. Maybe Cram Session is bad enough to the point where you would just Lunar Eclipse it. But in the world that we actually live in, where it has been played down here, Alutemu has got an interesting draw in the Gibberling, but I fear that this is still one turn too early to go in.
I would lean towards Fungal here to give him the chance of getting Glowfly Swarm. In terms of the Gibberling, I do agree that it's probably too early because the board he builds cannot be immediately Power of the Wilded unless he has very few minions, and then that gets answered by Combustion. Or if he goes super wide and doesn't buff it, it also gets pretty answered by Combustion. But hey, Bankyugi with the Hail Mary gets the Lunacy off the top, and now we have a true game of Hearthstone on our hands.
I mean, this is getting Spicy Town really quick. The Arbor up as well off the top is, of course, huge to follow up with next turn. So for Alutemu, you just want to make the most survivable board possible right here.
And you can go Lunar into Solar Power of the Wild. That seems really powerful.
Is that... it's definitely my first instinct as well. I'm just wondering, is it ever better to fit in Thorn Growth instead of the extra Power of the Wild? Do you get enough Gibberlings if you just go with your line?
4 3/3s versus a bunch of 2/2s and 2/3s. Yeah, this is probably better overall, right? Because 4 3/3s, like, you combust one and then potentially Shooting Star the other. Whereas this one looks more survivable to the majority of what Bankyugi's previous deck could do. I don't know what's better to do playing around Lunacy cards, though.
Cloak of Shadow is honestly a pretty good card to find here for Bankyugi. Not one you often see because you don't go for the Incanters into deck of Lunacy, but just to buy a turn before Flame Strike is nice.
Oh, wow. He can play his own tokens.
You can get 5 of them, right? Because you just corrupt it instantly.
Yeah.
That's sick.
I mean, they don't really trade well with anything, but you'll take it. If anything's actually, you just probably Apotheos 1 right now.
Right, yeah.
Make sure that it doesn't die on board.
But Alutemu got what he asked for. Obviously, the best top deck here would be Lightning Bloom to go instantly Solar plus Arbor, but you have to be looking very heavily at just slamming down the Arbor up right now and pushing some serious Damahe.
I'm just looking at if there's a way he can push for lethal next turn if he goes a little bit wider now and goes for something like, say, Adorable into Solar Power, and then you trade nothing but the 3/4, and then try to hit lethal with the Arbor up. The Arbor probably achieves something similar, though, and doesn't necessarily... Like, my play doesn't necessarily play around what Bankyugi can do any better, because Flame Strike, if it's somehow available to him, deals with that wide board the same as this would.
No, I definitely like that you're thinking outside the box here, though. It's definitely not a situation where you just instantly slam it down, because there were other effective uses of the mana. But this just puts an instant must-clear board right now. As, well, Bankyugi, at the very least, can just buy himself an extra turn here and probably just throw down the Apexis as well to spend the mana.
Right. He just has to figure out if he can buy this turn without having to use Cloak of Shadows, because he really wants to just survive until Flame Strike. But wow, this tunneler thingy, I forgot the name of, that is going to give him armor is pretty sick.
All I know is that it's Gold Road something, because I always get... It always comes up when I search gold to disenchant all my gold cards.
Oh, wow. Pretty good result off the Plague as well. Lets him kill 2 additional minions. And Alutemu has 1 more board refill in this Gibberling, but Bankyugi is sitting on Cloak of Shadows into turn 7 Flame Strike. Yikes.
No, it's very, very clever play from Bankyugi. I think I was looking at a snap Cloak of Shadows on this turn, but he very correctly realized you just don't have to here. You can wait an extra turn, then they go all in, and then you Flame Strike, and you hope that that's enough to just win the game on the spot.
Right. A couple turns ago, I was suggesting Alutemu go wide instead of buffing immediately with the Arbor up, and that's probably just strictly worse to what he did because he gets to push more damage overall by starting with Arbor up. Right. But any reasoning for not going Arbor up there if any, would have been Soul of the Forest, because that's the one card that plays around most of the AoE that exists in the game. And Alutemu needs to get it next turn if he's staying in this one, in my opinion, because this Flame Strike is going to blow him out of the water.
Yeah, it's that or the Pride's Fury, right? Because Solar Eclipse plus Pride's Fury would pull him out of range of any kind of Flame Strike damage, I think.
That's true.
So a few good top decks for sure for Alutemu, but he needs to get them, because right here for Bankyugi, your Cloak of Shadows, and honestly, I think you just pass outside of that. Save the Libram of Hope for the complete swing afterwards. You don't want to let them trade it into it.
If you're worried about specifically Pride's Fury or Soul of the Forest, though, then in that world, it is better to play it and get the mana spent, I think.
Fair.
He's certainly going to Flame Strike. But if he's thinking about just winning the game overall and saying that you don't have one of those, then the Flame Strike allows him to sweep the board in to then set up for a world where Alutemu has no comebacks, and Alutemu knows it. I would pay a lot of money to know what he is mouthing to himself right now.
Oh, I'm sure you could piece that together, right? Duolingo Japanese Queen.
It might not be rated wholesome enough. Who knows? And he gets the circle. Oh,
Yeah.
disgusting.
Recently buffed as well, so it's 0 mana. I'm glad Alutemu sees the comedy in that, at least, as the next card was Pride's Fury. Oh.
The pain. This is why it feels bad to play Token Druid.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. This was just discussed intensively in the European region, why the deck is good on paper, but when you take losses with it, you just feel so helpless. And that's why not a lot of people actually end up bringing it. This Libram of Hope is going to close out the game almost certainly. Maybe not. Fungal into Glowfly still gives Alutemu a chance, maybe.
Fungal Glowfly, or if he gets Arbor up and is able to go Solar Arbor, like, there are outs. There are very, very slim outs here still for Alutemu. I wouldn't concede yet.
Okay, Nature Studies can pick him up. Card draw. I don't even think Cenarian Ward is good enough here. Okay.
Damn.
Desperation mode. Growth is card draw next turn.
Yeah, that's the best I'm seeing.
Ay, ay, ay.
He can add a Libram of Hope to his hand with Mark of the Spike Shell? Is that ever a thing?
No. Because it's gonna be bigger than the one he puts in his hand.
What to do?
I think it's between Prides and Power, and with the Lightning Bloom in hand, he potentially has mana to play both Prides in one turn, although maybe not if he growths. Because the world Alutemu has to live in right now is the very next draw, or the draw he gets off of Wild Growth, is Glowfly Swarm, and then you immediately want to buff that board, right? So I think to have the mana to do everything, it's Power of the Wild. It's all very niche, though.
Super out there, but he's banked a lot of mana for next turn at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
What?
What?
It's just good, right? You just play it. They can't do anything.
True. Yeah, even if Alutemu plays Lightning, he just has no mana to work with. I think Alutemu, good-natured as he is, gets to see the humor in this at least. The Lightning Bloom costs 1. I forgot.
Yeah, I mean, that... How does that work with nature's...
I don't get it, honestly, because it was discounting the soul, but only because it was drawn off the deck and everything else wasn't discounted. It just makes 0 sense to me.
Well, I mean, he's going to have like 1 million mana to work with obviously Overgrowthing there and Bloom. He's alive at 1 health. Sorry, the ping can't fit in, so 2 health, but... okay, if he can put up the most insane board you've ever seen, I'm ready to be amazed, Alutemu.
Yeah, he can at least go out in a blaze of glory.
I can see.
Or not. Alutemu throws it down, and Bankyugi makes it through 3-2 even after losing the favorable matchup of Libram Paladin versus OTK Demon Hunter. Man, Bankyugi put on quite a show today, didn't he?
Yeah, as humble and respectful in victory as he is in defeat, a true competitor, Bankyugi, and playing very, very well, I think. Piloting all of his lineups with all of his decks, with aplomb. And overall, I think the mage we can still have question marks about. It's really just an unknown, to be perfectly honest, as to whether it does fit in the lineup now after seeing the recent nerfs. Again, the nerf to Springwater, we have seen time and again, it is very impactful, but still managing to get over the finish line here and taking down Alutemu. This is a huge win for Bankyugi as he can really start setting his sights on locking in that top 8 playoff spot now.
That is very true. Also, maybe potentially even taking over Alutemu or overtaking Alutemu's points total so far. Bankyugi's had pretty